The message came on a Tuesday morning, and it changed everything. Ho was knee-deep in muddy water when the sky turned dark. He looked up from his rice field and saw the massive ship blocking out the sun. It was bigger than his entire village, bigger than the mountain behind his home. The old farmer had seen many strange things in his 62 years of life, but nothing like this. His granddaughter came running from the house. She was only 12 years old, but she was smart and brave. She grabbed his arm and pointed at the sky. "Grandfather, what is that thing?" Ho wiped the mud from his hands and watched the ship hover above the clouds. He did not feel fear. He had survived too many hard times to feel fear from something he did not understand yet. "I do not know," he said calmly, "but I think we will find out soon." All around the world, similar ships appeared. They hung in the sky over every major city, over New York and Tokyo, over London and Seoul, over small towns and big capitals. The entire planet held its breath and waited. The aliens made contact 3 hours later. They called themselves the Celestial Council, and they controlled 1,000 star systems across the galaxy. Their message was simple but terrifying. Humanity had to prove its worth or face complete destruction. "Your species has reached the stars," the alien voice said through every screen and speaker on Earth. "You have touched the edge of our territory. Now you must prove you deserve to exist among the civilized races of the galaxy." The leaders of Earth gathered in an emergency meeting. Presidents and prime ministers, generals and scientists. They all argued about what to do. Some wanted to fight. Others wanted to surrender. Nobody knew the right answer. The Celestial Council gave them the terms. There would be a single combat. One champion from humanity against one champion from the Council. If humanity won, they would be accepted into the galactic community. If they lost, every human would be enslaved and their planet would be stripped of all resources. "We will send," the alien commander announced. "He is our greatest super soldier. He has never been defeated in 300 years of combat. He has killed champions from 47 different species. Choose your warrior wisely, humans. Your entire future depends on this fight." The world erupted into chaos. Every nation wanted to send their best fighter. The Americans offered their most decorated Special Forces soldier. The Russians presented their strongest combat expert. The Chinese brought forward a master of ancient martial arts who had trained for 40 years. But the Celestial Council had more to say. They showed images of, and when humans saw him, many lost hope. Stood 12 feet tall. His body was covered in thick armored scales that could stop bullets and blades. His hands ended in plasma claws that burned at the temperature of a small star. His eyes could see in complete darkness, and his muscles were enhanced with alien technology that made him stronger than 20 human men combined. He was not born this way. The Council had spent 200 years building him. They took the strongest warrior from the strongest species and then improved him with science and machines. They replaced his blood with liquid metal. They filled his bones with unbreakable alloys. They programmed his brain to feel no pain, no fear, no mercy. Was not just a soldier. He was a weapon designed to end civilizations. The human champions suddenly did not seem so impressive. The American soldier was strong and skilled, but he was still just a man. The Russian expert was fast and deadly, but he was still made of flesh and bone. The Chinese master was wise and experienced, but he was still mortal. Nobody believed any human could defeat. Ho heard all of this on his old radio while he worked in his fields. His village was far from any major city, but the news reached even the smallest corners of the world. His neighbors gathered in the village center to watch the announcements on a shared television. They whispered and worried. Some of the women cried. Some of the men prayed. Ho just kept working. He had rice to plant, and the season would not wait for aliens or apocalypses. Found him in the field as the sun began to set. She sat on the edge of the paddy and watched him work. Her face was troubled. "Grandfather, are we all going to die?" Ho stopped and looked at his granddaughter. She had lost her parents in a car accident 3 years ago. He was all she had left. He walked over and sat down next to her, not caring that his clothes were wet and dirty. "Do you remember what I taught you about storms?" he asked. Nodded. "You said that storms always pass. We just have to be patient and strong." "That is right. And do you remember what I taught you about fighting?" Thought for a moment. "You said that the strongest fighter is not always the one who wins. The one who wins is the one who does not give up." Ho smiled and put his arm around her. "You are a good student. Now help me finish planting these seeds. The rice will not grow itself." That night, as slept in her small bed, Ho sat outside and looked at the stars. Somewhere up there, an alien monster waited to destroy his world. Somewhere down here, powerful people argued about how to stop it. But Ho was not thinking about any of that. He was thinking about his life, about all the battles he had already fought and won. He thought about the drought that killed half his crops when he was young. He thought about the flood that destroyed his first house. He thought about the disease that took his wife 20 years ago. He thought about raising his son alone, and then raising his granddaughter when his son was taken too. Every year brought a new challenge. Every season tested him in a different way, and every time Ho survived. Not because he was strong or fast or smart, but because he refused to stop trying, because he got up every morning and did what needed to be done. The alien super soldier was powerful. Ho had no doubt about that, but power was not everything. Ho had seen strong men break under pressure. He had seen fast men stumble when the road got rough. He had seen smart men make foolish choices when fear clouded their minds. True strength came from somewhere else. It came from the heart, from the soul, from the endless well of determination that kept a person going when everything told them to give up. Ho made his decision. The next morning, he walked to the village office and used their computer to send a message to the government. His neighbor, a young man named Dong, helped him with the technology. Ho had never been good with machines. "What are you sending?" Dong asked. "I am volunteering," Ho said. Dong laughed, thinking it was a joke. Then he saw the old farmer's face and stopped laughing. "Grandfather Ho, you cannot be serious. You are 62 years old. You are a rice farmer. You have never even been in a real fight." "I have been in many fights," Ho said quietly, "just not the kind you are thinking of." The message was sent and Ho went back to his fields. He did not expect anyone to respond. He was just an old man from a small village. The government had thousands of trained soldiers to choose from. Why would they pick him? But 3 days later, a helicopter landed in his rice paddy. Men in suits got out and walked toward his house. The whole village came to watch. The leader of the group was a woman named. She worked for the president and had been given the impossible task of finding a champion for humanity. She had reviewed thousands of applications from soldiers and fighters and athletes. None of them seemed right. Then she saw Ho's message. It was short and simple. "I am a farmer. I have spent my whole life fighting the earth and the sky to grow food for my family. I have never given up, and I never will. If you need someone who can outlast anything, I am your man." Did not know why, but something about those words spoke to her. She decided to meet this farmer in person. When she saw Ho, she almost turned around and left. He was thin and weathered. His hands were rough and calloused. His back was slightly bent from decades of work. He did not look like a warrior. He looked like someone's grandfather. But when she looked into his eyes, she saw something different. She saw no fear, no doubt, no hesitation, just a calm certainty that made her believe for one crazy moment that this old man might actually have a chance. "Why do you want to fight?" she asked him. Ho looked at his granddaughter standing in the doorway. Then he looked at his neighbors gathered around. Then he looked at his fields, where green shoots were just beginning to push through the water. "Because someone has to," he said. And because I have been preparing for this my whole life, even if I did not know it. Made her decision right there. The world would laugh at her. The generals would scream at her. The other nations would think humanity had gone insane. But she chose Ho. 1 week later, the old farmer from a small village stood before the leaders of the world. They stared at him with shock and anger. Some demanded that he be replaced with a real soldier. Others called the whole thing a disaster. But stood by her choice, and the president trusted her judgment. This man will be our champion, she announced. Not because he is the strongest or the fastest, but because he represents what humanity truly is. We are not a species of super soldiers. We are farmers and builders, workers and dreamers. We survive not through power but through patience, not through violence but through endurance. Ho said nothing. He just stood there in his simple clothes, looking at all the important people with the same calm expression he wore when checking his crops for insects. Watched from the back of the room, she was scared for her grandfather, but she was also proud, because she knew what those powerful people did not know yet. Her grandfather was the strongest person she had ever met, not strong in his muscles, strong in his heart, and that was the kind of strength that never failed. The announcement was made to the world. Humanity's champion would be a 62-year-old rice farmer named Ho. As expected, many people laughed, many people cried, many people lost all hope. But in small villages and quiet towns around the world, ordinary people looked at the old farmer on their screens and felt something unexpected. They felt hope, because they saw themselves in him. They saw their own struggles reflected in his weathered face. They saw their own determination mirrored in his steady eyes. Maybe, just maybe, humanity did not need a super soldier to win this fight. Maybe they just needed someone who refused to give up. The alien ship came for Ho on a bright morning. It descended from the clouds like a metal bird and landed in the empty field next to his village. The sound it made was like thunder, and the ground shook beneath everyone's feet. Ho had packed a small bag. Inside were some clean clothes, a photograph of his family, and his wooden staff. The staff had belonged to his father and his grandfather before that. It was made from an oak tree that grew on the mountain behind his village. It was smooth from years of use and strong enough to support a man's weight. When the soldiers from the government saw the staff, they tried to give him weapons. They offered him guns and knives and armor made from the strongest materials on earth. Ho refused everything. "I will fight with this," he said, holding up the wooden staff. The soldiers thought he was crazy, just smiled. She was beginning to understand this old farmer. "Are you sure?" she asked. "The council said you can bring any weapon you want." Ho tested the weight of the staff in his hands. He had carried it for 30 years. He knew every curve and every scratch on its surface. It felt like an extension of his body. "A weapon is only as good as the person who uses it," he said. "I know this staff, I trust it, that is enough." Was not allowed to come with him. The government said it was too dangerous, but she held on to her grandfather as long as she could. "Promise me you will come back," she whispered. Ho knelt down and looked into her eyes. He did not make promises he could not keep, but he had never lied to his granddaughter, and he would not start now. "I will do my best," he said, "and my best has always been enough. Remember what I taught you, be patient, be strong, and never stop believing in yourself." Wiped her tears and nodded. She watched as her grandfather walked toward the alien ship. He did not look back. He kept his eyes forward and his back straight. Even though he was old and thin, at that moment he looked like the bravest man in the world. The trip to the arena took 3 days. The Celestial Council had built it on a moon in a distant star system. Ho spent the journey alone in a small room on the alien ship. The walls were made of some strange metal that hummed with energy. The bed was too hard and the food tasted like nothing he had ever eaten before. But Ho did not complain. He had slept on harder ground during the lean years when he could not afford a proper bed. He had eaten worse food during the famines when even rice was hard to find. This was uncomfortable, but it was not suffering. He spent his time exercising in the small space. He stretched his old muscles and practiced his movements with the staff. The aliens who brought him food watched through a small window. They seemed confused by his actions. One of them, a tall creature with blue skin and 4 arms, finally asked him a question. "Why do you prepare? You cannot defeat no one can." Ho finished his exercise and wiped the sweat from his face. He looked at the alien with the same calm expression he always wore. "Have you ever planted rice?" he asked. The alien blinked its 3 eyes in confusion. "I do not understand your question." "When you plant rice," Ho explained, "you must stand in cold water for many hours. Your back hurts. Your legs cramp. The sun burns your skin and the insects bite you everywhere. Every part of your body tells you to stop, to give up, to go home and rest." He picked up his staff and held it across his shoulders, stretching his arms. "But if you listen to your body, the rice does not get planted. And if the rice does not get planted, your family does not eat. So you learn to ignore the pain. You learn to keep working even when everything tells you to stop. That is what I am preparing for, not to defeat your champion, but to outlast him." The alien did not respond. It simply walked away, shaking its head. Ho smiled slightly. He knew the aliens did not understand. That was fine. They would learn. The arena was unlike anything Ho had ever seen. It was a massive dome floating in space, large enough to hold 1,000,000 spectators. Creatures from 1,000 different worlds filled the seats, all of them eager to watch humanity fall. Ho walked out onto the fighting floor and looked around. The ground beneath his feet was made of packed dirt, similar to the earth in his fields back home. He knelt down and touched it with his fingers. It felt familiar. That gave him comfort. Above him, the stars shone through transparent walls. He could see the distant glow of Earth's sun, millions of miles away. Somewhere under that light was waiting for him. His neighbors were watching on their screens. His rice was growing in his fields, needing to be harvested in a few weeks. He had to survive this. He had work to do. The roar of the crowd told him that it arrived. The super soldier entered from the opposite side of the arena. Each step he took made the ground tremble. He was even more terrifying in person than he had appeared in the images. His armored scales reflected the light of 100 stars. His plasma claws burned with blue fire. His eyes glowed with deadly intelligence. Stopped in the center of the arena and looked at Ho. For a long moment, the super soldier said nothing. He just stared at the old human with his burning eyes. Then he laughed. The sound was deep and cruel. It echoed through the arena and made the spectators join in. 1,000,000 aliens laughed at the sight of humanity's champion. A thin old man with a wooden stick facing a monster designed to destroy worlds. "This is what humanity sends." His voice boomed through the dome. "I have killed warriors in their prime. I have crushed champions enhanced with the best technology in the galaxy, and they send me a grandfather." He stepped closer, towering over Ho like a mountain over a pebble. "I will end this quickly. It would be cruel to make you suffer for too long." Ho did not step back. He looked up at the massive creature and showed no fear. His heart was beating fast, but he had trained himself long ago to keep his emotions under control. Fear was just another sensation, like hunger or cold. It could be acknowledged and then ignored. "May I ask you something?" Ho said in a calm voice. Seemed surprised by the question. "What?" "In your 300 years of fighting, have you ever lost?" The super soldier's eyes narrowed. "No, never." Ho nodded slowly. "That is interesting. Do you know what the most dangerous kind of opponent is?" Did not answer. He was growing impatient with this strange human who talked instead of trembled. "The most dangerous opponent is not the strongest one," Ho continued. It is the one who has nothing to lose and everything to gain. You have won every fight you have ever been in. You have never tasted defeat. You do not know what it feels like to struggle, to suffer, to be broken and still get up again. He lifted his wooden staff and held it ready. I have lost many times in my life. I have failed and fallen and wanted to give up more times than I can count. But I am still here. I am still standing. And that makes me more dangerous than any super soldier. The crowd fell silent. They had never heard anyone speak to this way. The super soldier's claws burned brighter and his face twisted with anger. You dare to insult me. I will tear you apart so slowly that your screams will echo through the stars for 1,000 years. Ho simply smiled. We will see. The High Counselor of the Celestial Council stood from his throne and raised his hand. He was an ancient being with gray skin and eyes that held the wisdom of 10,000 years. The rules are simple, he announced. No weapons are forbidden. No techniques are banned. The fight continues until one combatant cannot continue or surrenders. There will be no pause and no rest. The winner decides the fate of their species. He paused and looked down at the arena. Champions, are you ready? Roared his answer, a sound that made the walls shake. Ho simply nodded. Then let the combat begin. The crowd erupted with cheers as charged. His massive form moved faster than something that large should be able to move. His plasma claws left trails of fire in the air as he slashed toward Ho with enough force to cut through steel. Ho moved. It was not a dramatic dodge or a flashy jump. He simply stepped to the side at the last moment, letting the deadly claws pass inches from his body. The heat from the plasma singed his clothes, but he was unharmed. Spun and attacked again, and again. Each strike was faster and more powerful than the last. Each one would have killed any normal opponent instantly. But Ho was not trying to fight back. He was not trying to win. He was simply trying not to lose. He moved through the attacks like water flowing around rocks. His wooden staff never touched the super soldier. He used it only for balance, planting it in the ground to pivot and change direction. The crowd watched in stunned silence. They had expected a quick execution. Instead, they were seeing something they had never witnessed before. They were seeing miss. Again and again, the super soldier attacked. Again and again, the old farmer avoided him. Ho's breathing was steady. His movements were efficient. He never wasted energy on unnecessary motions. Minutes passed, then an hour. Attacks began to slow, not much but enough for Ho to notice. The super soldier was getting tired, not from the physical effort but from the mental frustration of missing his target. Stand still and fight, bellowed. Ho did not respond. He just kept moving, kept avoiding, kept surviving. In the spectator section reserved for humans, watched with tears streaming down her face. She had hoped Ho might put up a good fight. She had never imagined he might actually have a chance. Back on Earth, billions of people watched on their screens. They had expected their champion to die in seconds. Instead, they saw him dance around the most dangerous warrior in the galaxy like a leaf in the wind. In a small village in Korea, a 12-year-old girl named sat in front of an old television and smiled through her tears. Her grandfather was not just surviving. He was winning. Not by being stronger, not by being faster, but by being smarter, by being patient, by being exactly what he had always been. A farmer who knew how to outlast any storm. 3 hours into the fight, and Ho was still standing. His body hurt in ways he had not felt in decades. His legs burned from constant movement. His arms ached from gripping the staff. His lungs worked hard to pull in the strange alien air of the arena. Every part of him screamed for rest. But Ho had been here before. Not in an alien arena fighting a super soldier, but in places just as demanding. He remembered the harvest seasons when he worked from before sunrise to long after sunset. He remembered the years of drought when he carried water from the distant river bucket by bucket. He remembered building his house with his own hands, lifting stones and cutting wood until his muscles felt like they would tear apart. Pain was just a signal. It was not a command. He could acknowledge it and keep going. Was getting frustrated. The super soldier had never faced an opponent like this. All his previous enemies had tried to fight back. They attacked him with weapons and powers, giving him targets to crush. This old human did neither. He simply moved, endlessly, patiently. "Why will you not fight?" demanded between attacks. Ho said nothing. He saved his breath for moving. The super soldier stopped for a moment, his chest heaving with anger. His plasma claws flickered as his body consumed massive amounts of energy to fuel his enhanced muscles. He had never needed to fight for this long before. His battles usually lasted seconds, not hours. "You are stalling," growled. "You think if you run long enough I will get tired, but I am a machine of war. I do not tire. I will chase you until the stars burn out if I have to." Ho finally spoke, his voice steady despite his exhaustion. "You talk a lot for someone who cannot catch an old man." The crowd, which had been watching in tense silence, suddenly stirred. A few aliens made sounds that might have been laughter. They were laughing at. The undefeated champion of the Celestial Council was being mocked by a human farmer. His eyes blazed with fury. He roared and charged with renewed strength, his claws cutting through the air faster than before. The ground cracked beneath his feet. The walls of the arena shook with each step. Ho felt his heart race. This was different. The super soldier was pushing past his limits, fueled by pure rage. The attacks were coming too fast to dodge completely. A plasma claw grazed Ho's arm. The pain was instant and blinding. His skin burned and his sleeve caught fire. He rolled away and patted out the flames, but the damage was done. His left arm now had a long wound that oozed blood. The crowd cheered. First blood had been drawn. Surely this was the beginning of the end. But Ho did not fall. He did not cry out. He simply adjusted his grip on the staff, favoring his injured arm, and continued to move. Struck again and again. He managed to land more hits now, a slash across Ho's back, a burn on his leg, a cut on his cheek. Each wound was painful, but none were fatal. Ho always moved just enough to avoid the killing blow. He was bleeding from a dozen places now. His simple clothes were torn and stained. He looked like a man who should be dead, but he kept moving. In the human section, gripped the railing until her knuckles turned white. She wanted to look away but could not. Every time Ho was hit, her heart stopped. Every time he got back up, she felt hope return. "How is he still moving?" one of the generals beside her whispered. "Because he refuses to stop," replied. On Earth, the world watched in collective anguish. They saw their champion being slowly torn apart. Many people wept. Many turned off their screens, unable to bear the sight. But many more kept watching, praying for a miracle. In her village, sat frozen in front of the television. Her hands were clasped together so tightly that her fingers had turned pale. She watched her grandfather bleed and stumble and suffer. But she did not cry. She remembered his lessons too well. "Pain is temporary," he had told her once when she scraped her knee falling from a tree. "But giving up lasts forever. As long as you keep trying, you have not lost." Her grandfather was still trying, so she would keep believing. The fight reached its fourth hour, was breathing hard now. His movements, while still deadly, had lost some of their speed. His plasma claws flickered sometimes, struggling to maintain their heat. He had never burned so much energy in a single battle before. And still Ho would not fall. The old farmer was in terrible shape. He limped on his injured leg. He held his wounded arm close to his body. His face was pale from blood loss. Anyone else would have collapsed long ago. But Ho had spent his entire life pushing past the point where others would stop. He knew the secret that the super soldier did not understand. The body could always go further than the mind believed. The limits that people thought were real were just illusions. True strength came from accepting pain and continuing anyway. "I do not understand," said, his voice less angry now and more confused. "You are dying. Every moment you continue, you suffer more. Why do you not surrender? I would make your end quick." Ho stopped moving for the first time in hours. He stood there, swaying slightly, looking at the monster that towered over him. Blood dripped from his wounds onto the arena floor. "Let me tell you a story," he said. Blinked in surprise. "What?" "Many years ago there was a great drought in my village. No rain fell for 2 years. The crops died. The wells went dry. Many people left to find water elsewhere." Ho leaned on his staff, catching his breath. "But some of us stayed. We dug deeper wells. We carried water from far away. We ate less so our children could eat more. Every day was harder than the last. Every night we wondered if we would survive until morning." He looked up with eyes that held no fear. "The drought lasted 3 years. 3 years of suffering. 3 years of everyone telling us to give up. But we did not. And when the rain finally came, we were still there to see it. The people who left came back to empty houses, but we were still standing in our fields, ready to plant again." Ho raised his staff, pointing it at the super soldier. "You ask why I do not surrender. It is because I do not know how. I have never learned. All I know is how to keep going no matter what, and I will keep going until my heart stops beating." The arena was completely silent. Every spectator from every species watched the wounded human with something new in their eyes. Some of them recognized what they were seeing. They came from worlds that had been conquered by the Council. They had ancestors who had fought impossible battles. They were seeing a spirit that could not be broken. Felt something he had never felt before in 300 years of combat. He felt uncertain. This human should be dead. By every calculation, by every measure of strength and power, this fight should have ended hours ago. But the old farmer would not fall. "You are insane," said quietly. Ho smiled through the blood on his face. "Maybe, but I am still here." The super soldier attacked again, but something had changed. His strikes were still powerful, but they lacked the precision of before. His mind was troubled. His certainty was shaken. Ho saw the opening. For the first time in the fight, he did not just dodge. He stepped forward and swung his wooden staff with all the strength he had left. The oak connected with his knee, right at the joint where the armor was thinnest. The sound it made echoed through the arena. Stumbled, it was only for a moment, just a slight loss of balance, but the crowd saw it. The undefeated champion had been moved by a wooden stick wielded by an old man. The aliens in the stands began to whisper. This was not possible, could not be hurt, could not stumble, always won. But the evidence was right in front of them. Ho did not press his advantage. He knew he did not have the strength for a sustained attack. Instead, he moved back, creating distance, returning to his patient strategy. But something had shifted. The fight was no longer about a super soldier hunting a helpless human. It was becoming something else. It was becoming a battle of wills. In the council's private viewing area, the High Counselor watched with narrow eyes. He had lived for 10,000 years. He had seen countless battles. He had watched destroy champions far more impressive than this human. But he had never seen anything quite like this. The human was not trying to win through strength. He was trying to win through something else, through patience, through endurance, through an unbreakable determination that seemed to defy the laws of nature. The High Counselor leaned forward in his throne, suddenly very interested in how this would end. The 5th hour began and the fight continued. Ho was barely standing now. His wounds had slowed their bleeding, but he had lost a lot of blood. His vision blurred sometimes. His hands shook when they gripped the staff. But he kept moving. Was also struggling, though he tried to hide it. His plasma claws were dim now, barely glowing. His movements were slower, heavier. His enhanced muscles were running out of the special fuel that powered them. For the first time in his long life, was discovering what it meant to fight at his limits. And in that discovery, he was learning something about himself that he had never known. He was not as invincible as he had believed. The human farmer had shown him that, not through power or skill, but through simple, stubborn refusal to accept defeat. Looked at his opponent, this bleeding, broken old man who still stood against him, and felt something unexpected. He felt respect. The 6th hour of the fight brought something no one expected. Stopped attacking. The super soldier stood in the center of the arena, his massive chest heaving, his plasma claws completely dark now. His body, which had been engineered to be perfect, was failing him. The liquid metal in his veins was running cold. The enhanced muscles were cramping. The reinforced bones felt heavy. He had never experienced these sensations before. He did not know how to handle them. Ho stood across from him, watching. The old farmer was in terrible condition. He could barely lift his staff anymore. His wounded leg had gone numb below the knee. He had to fight to keep his eyes open. But he was still standing. "What are you?" asked, his voice raw. Ho took a moment to answer. When he spoke, his words came slowly, each one costing him effort. "I am just a man, a farmer, a grandfather, nothing special by any measure you would understand." He planted his staff in the ground and leaned on it heavily. "But I have spent my life learning one thing, the hardest thing in the universe to do. I have learned how to keep going when there is no hope, when there is no chance, when every sensible part of you says to stop." He met glowing eyes. "You were built to fight. I was built to endure. Those are not the same thing." Process these words. In his 300 years, he had never thought about fighting this way. To him, combat was simple. You attacked. You destroyed. You won. There was no room for endurance because his enemies always fell before endurance mattered. But this enemy would not fall. "I could kill you right now," said. "Even weakened, I am still stronger than you. I could crush you with my bare hands." "Then do it." The simple response shocked. The human was not begging for mercy. He was not running away. He was challenging the super soldier to finish what he started. Moved forward. Each step was harder than the last. His body, which had never known limits, was hitting them now. But he still had enough strength to kill one old man. He reached out with his massive hand, ready to crush the human skull. Ho did not move. He just stood there, looking up at the monster about to end his life. And then saw something in those old eyes. Not fear, not despair, something else. Acceptance. The human had accepted that he might die. He had made peace with it. And yet he was still standing, still refusing to kneel. His hand stopped inches from Ho's head. The super soldier stood frozen, unable to complete the killing blow. His mind, which had been engineered to be as cold as his body was strong, was suddenly flooded with strange thoughts. He thought about all the champions he had killed. They had all begged in the end. They had all tried to run. They had all broken before his power. This one was different. This one would die standing, facing his enemy, unbroken. For the first time in his existence, felt something like doubt. Was this how champions were supposed to be? Not powerful beings enhanced by technology, but ordinary creatures who refused to surrender their dignity. His hand trembled. The crowd watched in absolute silence. They had never seen hesitate. They had never seen him struggle. The great super soldier, the terror of the galaxy, was frozen by an old man's gaze. Ho saw the hesitation. He saw the doubt. And in that moment, he did something unexpected. He attacked. His staff swung upward, catching under the chin. The super soldier's head snapped back. The blow would not have moved him normally, but in his weakened state, it knocked him off balance. Ho did not wait. He spun the staff and struck again, hitting the same knee joint he had targeted before. This time the impact was stronger. This time something cracked. Roared in pain. Actual pain. Not frustration, not anger, but the genuine sensation of being hurt. He stumbled backward, favoring his damaged leg. Ho followed, his exhaustion forgotten, moving on pure instinct and determination. He struck the other knee, the ribs, the elbow. Each blow was precise, aimed at the weak points in his armor. He had been studying the super soldier for hours. While running, while dodging, he had watched and learned. He had found the places where the scales did not overlap properly, the joints that were less protected, the spots where a wooden staff could actually do damage. Tried to fight back, but his body was failing him. His arms felt like they weighed 1,000 pounds. His legs could barely support him. Every movement was agony. For the first time in 300 years, was losing. The super soldier fell to one knee. The impact shook the arena. He looked up at the human standing before him, and he could not believe what was happening. "How?" he whispered. "How are you doing this?" Ho stood over him, breathing hard, barely able to hold his staff anymore. But there was fire in his eyes, the fire that had kept him alive through droughts and famines, through loss and grief, through every hardship the universe had thrown at him. "I told you," Ho said. "I learned to keep going. That is all this is. You are tired, you are confused, you are hurting, and you do not know how to handle any of it, but I have felt these things every day of my life. They are old friends to me." He raised his staff. "You were built to win quickly. What happens when you cannot? What happens when the fight lasts longer than your strength? You have no answer because you never needed one, but I have always needed one, and my answer is simple." He brought the staff down on shoulder. The super soldier crumpled further, now on both knees. "Never give up." The final blow came. Ho swung his staff with everything he had left. It connected with the side of his head, right where the armor was thinnest near the temple. The super soldier's eyes flickered, his body swayed. And then the undefeated champion of the Celestial Council fell. He crashed to the ground like a mountain collapsing. The impact sent dust flying across the arena. For a long moment, he did not move. The silence that followed was the deepest Ho had ever known. 1,000,000 aliens sat frozen in their seats, unable to process what they had just witnessed. The High Counselor rose slowly from his throne, his ancient face showing genuine shock. Ho stood over his fallen enemy, his staff still raised, waiting. He had learned long ago never to assume a threat was finished until he was certain. But did not get up. The super soldier lay on the ground, his eyes open but unfocused, his body twitching slightly. He was not dead, but he was defeated. His systems were shutting down, overwhelmed by damage and exhaustion they had never been designed to handle. The High Counselor's voice echoed through the arena. "The human wins." The words seemed impossible. Several aliens asked their translators to repeat them. Surely there had been a mistake. Surely the super soldier would rise again. But did not rise. And Ho, the old rice farmer from a small village on Earth, stood victorious. The human section of the arena erupted first, screamed with joy, tears streaming down her face. The soldiers and generals who had doubted Ho were hugging each other, laughing and crying at the same time. On Earth, the reaction was instant and overwhelming. In every city and every village, people poured into the streets. They cheered and sang and wept. Complete strangers embraced each other. Old enemies put aside their differences to celebrate together. Humanity had won. Against all odds, against the most powerful warrior in the galaxy, a simple farmer had proven that humans deserve to exist among the stars. In her village, collapsed onto the floor, sobbing with relief. Her grandfather was alive. He had won. She would see him again. Her neighbors rushed in, having watched the fight on their own screens. They lifted her up and carried her outside, where the entire village was celebrating. Fireworks exploded in the sky. Music played from every house. People who had not smiled in weeks were dancing in the streets, but could not stop crying, not from sadness, from overwhelming joy. Her grandfather had done the impossible. Back in the arena, Ho finally lowered his staff. His legs gave out and he fell to his knees. The world spun around him. He had pushed his body far past its limits, and now it was demanding payment. Medical teams rushed onto the arena floor. Human doctors who had come with the delegation fought through the crowd to reach him. They wrapped his wounds, gave him fluids, tried to keep him conscious. "You did it," one of them kept saying. "You actually did it." Ho smiled weakly. His vision was fading. He could hear cheering from somewhere far away, but it sounded like it was underwater. "Tell my granddaughter," he whispered before the darkness took him, "that I kept my promise." He closed his eyes and let the exhaustion claim him. His body went limp in the doctor's arms. For one terrible moment, everyone feared the worst. Had humanity's champion survived the fight only to die from his wounds? But the medical team worked quickly. They stabilized his vital signs. They sealed his wounds with advanced technology borrowed from the aliens. They pumped nutrients into his starving cells. Ho was not dead. He was simply resting after the greatest battle of his life. And when he woke, he would discover that everything had changed. Not just for humanity, for the entire galaxy. Ho woke 3 days later in a room made of light. At first he thought he was dead. The walls glowed with soft colors and the bed beneath him was softer than anything he had ever felt. There was no pain anymore. His body felt strange, like it belonged to someone else. Then he heard a familiar voice. "Grandfather." His face appeared above him. She was crying, but she was smiling too. Behind her stood several doctors, all watching him with relief and wonder. "You are awake," said, grabbing his hand. "You have been sleeping for 3 days. The doctor said you almost died, but you did not. You never do." Ho tried to speak, but his throat was dry. A doctor quickly brought water, and after a few sips he found his voice. "Did we win?" Everyone laughed, stepped forward, wiping her eyes. "Yes, Ho, we won. Humanity has been accepted into the Celestial Council. We are now part of the galactic community. Full rights, full membership, all because of you." Ho processed this information slowly. His mind was still foggy from the long sleep. "And the super soldier?" His expression softened. "He survived. The council is treating his injuries, but he has not spoken since the fight. The doctors say he is in some kind of shock. He has never lost before. He does not know how to handle it." Ho nodded slowly. He understood that feeling in a way. Defeat was a strange teacher. It could break you or make you stronger. He hoped would find his way. Over the next few days, Ho recovered. The alien medical technology was remarkable. Wounds that would have taken months to heal on Earth closed in hours. Damage that would have left permanent scars vanished completely. By the end of the week, he felt better than he had in years. But he was not the same person who had entered that arena. He was a symbol now. The whole galaxy knew his name. Representatives from dozens of alien species came to meet him. They brought gifts and offers of friendship. They wanted to know the secret of his victory. Ho gave the same answer to everyone. "There is no secret. I just refuse to lose. Anyone can do the same if they are willing to endure enough pain." Most of the aliens did not understand. Their cultures valued strength and power above all else. The idea that weakness could be turned into advantage through pure will was foreign to them. But a few understood. They came from species that had been conquered by the Council long ago. They remembered ancestors who had fought hopeless battles with that same stubborn refusal to surrender. They looked at Ho and saw a kindred spirit. The High Counselor requested a private meeting on the 10th day. Ho agreed, despite concerns. He had no fear of the ancient alien. What more could the council do to him? The meeting took place in a chamber older than human civilization. The walls were carved with the histories of countless worlds. The High Counselor sat on his throne, looking smaller somehow, less intimidating. "I have lived for 10,000 years, the counselor began. "I have seen empires rise and fall. I have watched species evolve from primitive creatures to masters of technology. I have witnessed wonders beyond your imagination." He leaned forward, his ancient eyes studying Ho carefully. "But I have never seen anything like what you did in that arena. Was designed to be unbeatable. We spent 2 centuries perfecting him. And you, an ordinary farmer with a wooden stick, defeated him through nothing but stubbornness." Ho sat quietly, waiting for the point. "I must know," the counselor continued, "is this unique to you, or is this quality present in all humans?" Ho thought about the question for a long moment. He thought about his parents, who had survived a war that killed millions. He thought about his neighbors, who rebuilt their homes every time a storm destroyed them. He thought about his granddaughter, who had lost her parents and kept smiling anyway. "I am not special," he finally said. "Every human has this capacity. We are a species that evolved through hardship. We survived ice ages and plagues. We fought predators bigger and stronger than us. We crossed oceans with nothing but wooden boats and faith." He met the counselor's gaze. "What you saw in that arena was not something unusual. It was something every human carries inside them. We call it many things: stubbornness, determination, spirit. But it is all the same thing. It is the refusal to accept that anything is impossible." The High Counselor was silent for a long time. Then, slowly, he began to laugh. It was a strange sound, like rocks grinding together, but it was genuine. "I see now why your species reached the stars so quickly. You have only been a technological civilization for a few centuries, yet you have already touched the edge of our territory. Others took thousands of years to achieve what you did in hundreds." He stood from his throne and bowed his head. It was the first time he had bowed to anyone in. "Humanity is welcome in the Celestial Council, not as a lesser species but as equals. Perhaps, in time, you will be our teachers rather than our students." The ceremony of acceptance took place a week later. Representatives from every human nation gathered in the Great Hall of the Council. Billions watched on screens across Earth and throughout the galaxy. Ho stood at the center of it all, wearing his simple farming clothes despite the offers of fine robes and armor. He held his wooden staff, now damaged from the fight but still intact. He refused to replace it. The High Counselor presented him with the symbol of unity, a crystal that contained the light of 1,000 stars. It was the highest honor any species could receive. "Ho of Earth," the counselor announced, "champion of humanity, you have proven your species worthy of a place among the civilized worlds. From this day forward, humans are protected by the Council. Your people may travel freely through our territory. Your voices will be heard in our assemblies. Your future is your own to shape." Ho accepted the crystal and looked out at the assembled aliens and humans. He was not comfortable with speeches. He was a farmer, not a politician, but he knew he had to say something. "I am honored," he began slowly, "but I do not deserve this praise alone. I am just one man who did what he had to do. The real strength of humanity lies in all of us, in every person who wakes up each day and keeps trying despite the difficulties they face." He raised the crystal so everyone could see it. "This belongs to every farmer who plants seeds in difficult soil, every parent who works long hours to feed their children, every child who keeps dreaming despite being told they cannot succeed. We are all champions. We have always been." He lowered the crystal and smiled. "Now, if you will excuse me, I have rice to harvest. The season does not wait for ceremonies." The audience, human and alien alike, laughed, and then they cheered. They cheered for the old farmer who had saved humanity and then asked to go back to his fields. Ho returned to Earth 2 days later. The ship landed in his village just as the first one had weeks ago, but everything was different now. His neighbors lined the streets to welcome him. His rice paddies had been tended by volunteers while he was away. His house had been repaired and cleaned, and was waiting at the door. She ran to him and threw her arms around him. Ho held her tight, feeling the weight of everything that had happened finally settle on his shoulders. "I missed you," she whispered. "I missed you too," he replied. "But I am home now, and I am not going anywhere." That evening, Ho sat outside his house and looked at the stars. Somewhere up there, aliens were still talking about him. His name would be remembered for centuries, maybe forever. But none of that mattered to him. What mattered was the ground beneath his feet, the rice growing in his fields, the granddaughter sleeping peacefully in her bed, the simple life he had always known. Visited him once more before returning to the capital. She found him knee-deep in muddy water, planting new seedlings. "The president wants to give you a medal," she said. "I have enough medals," Ho replied without looking up. "The council wants to name a star system after you." "What would I do with a star system? I can barely manage one farm." Laughed. "You really are remarkable, you know. Most people would let all this attention change them." Ho finally stopped working and looked at her. "I am an old man. I have spent my life learning who I am. No amount of praise or glory will make me into someone different. I was a farmer before the aliens came. I am still a farmer now. That is enough for me." He returned to his planting. "But tell the president I said thank you. And tell the council I will visit again if they ever need advice on how to grow rice in space. Someone should teach those aliens about real food." Left with a smile on her face. She had never met anyone quite like Ho. She hoped she never would. He was one of a kind, even among a species full of stubborn, enduring, remarkable people. Months passed. The world slowly returned to normal. Humanity began exploring the galaxy, meeting new species, building new relationships. The fight in the arena became a legend, told and retold until it barely resembled what actually happened. Ho ignored it all. He tended his rice. He taught his granddaughter the old ways. He lived the simple life he had always lived. One evening, as the sun set over the mountains, sat with him on the porch and asked him a question. "Grandfather, why do you think you won, really?" Ho thought for a long moment. The stars were coming out one by one, ancient lights from ancient worlds. "Because I knew what I was fighting for," he finally said. "The super soldier fought because he was built to fight. I fought for you, for our village, for our people. When you have something worth more than your life, you can endure things that should be impossible." He put his arm around her. "That is the secret, not strength or skill or power. Love. Love for your family, love for your home, love for the future you want to protect." Leaned against him, watching the stars. "Do you think the aliens understand that now?" Ho smiled. "Some of them do. The rest will learn, and if they need reminding, well." He lifted his wooden staff, still from the battle but still unbroken. "I will be here." They sat together in silence as night fell over the village. An old farmer and his granddaughter, watching the stars that now welcomed humanity among them. And somewhere in those stars, the legend of Ho was just beginning. The peasant who defeated empires. Not with weapons, not with power, but with the simple, unbreakable will to never give up.